Good morning. Thank you for watching the Olsson Manufacturing video on how to install an ST-275. Today we're at the Elliott Bay Marine in Seattle, Washington, and we're going to install our davit on a standard express style boat. Let's begin. The ST-275 is our standard tilt davit with a 275 pound capacity. 275 pounds is roughly an 11-foot boat with a 15 or 18 horsepower outboard, on occasion with a small unihelm steering station. The ST-275 has a 36-inch center hinge base and reaches nearly 60 inches at the arm. In most circumstances, we'll want to center the ST-275 on the swim step and transom of the boat. After finding our center point, we want to measure out 18 inches to find the location of those hinges. Our standard tilt davit hinge looks like this and will mount as far aft as practical. In this case, we have a rub rail or a grab rail on the aft edge that does not work against us. This is our standard hinge. In this installation, you'll see we're going to provide one of our stainless steel quick removal hinges. This leaves not a toe kick if the davit is removed, but a nice flush plate that is unobtrusive. We've now mounted the hinges to the davit with the axle bolts and verified that we're on center. In this case, we can mark the actual holes. If we were just using the hinge, we could measure the corners so that we can go back and locate the centerline holes. So now we can remove the davit, line up our corners that we've measured, and mark the center line necessary to drill the holes in this hinge plate. A helpful tip: spin the drill bit backwards to soften the edge before drilling the hole in the fiberglass or the teak. Now with the davit installed, we can turn our sights on the block and tackle and the cleat installation. The ST-275 comes with two stainless steel blocks with high quality ball bearing rollers in it, 30 feet of 3/8 yacht braid, carabiner, a D-shackle, and an 8-inch cleat to operate up and down. Just as we did on the swim step, we've located center line on the transom. We know with the spread almost 60 inches on the davit, we're going to measure over approximately 30 inches. The 8-inch cleat stainless steel investment cast will get mounted right there. One end will attach to the block and tackle. The other end of the block and tackle mounts to the davit. We'll locate it and mark our holes for drilling. With the cleat installed, we locate the block and tackle with the D-shackle. This is designed to go around either leg. We want to ensure that it's tight. The other end hooks on the top arm loop of the davit. With that installed, we can push the davit in the water and the block and tackle will follow. To stow the davit, a quick half hitch around the cleat, and then tender and davit would be stowed. A few things to think about when considering the ST-275. One of people's concerns is that there's too much adverse load placed on the aft edge of the swim step. As you can see, when the davit is in the stowed position, we're actually creating lift or tension on the utmost aft edge, and the compression falls about 8 inches further forward. Another thing is if you were to deploy the tender and not need the davit system, you could push it in the water and it frees up the swim step. So if you were on anchor or at a dock and we're concerned about ingress and egress from the swim step, you can see that the davit disappears. As it's 3/16 stainless steel and completely sealed, the water does not affect the davit. Minimum requirements for the ST-275. We use up about 16 inches of space from the aft edge of the hinge to the curvature of the davit. If we have more than that, not a problem. If we have less than that, then we need to think about extending the hinge plates further aft. Transom height. Block and tackle ideally would be parallel when in the stowed position. Any lower than that, we lose some of that mechanical advantage. It's a little harder to break the surface tension. Higher than that's great, but we need to make sure that we can come to a stowed position and are not suspending the davit at all times. 40 inches is ideal. We can go as low as 24 or as high as 6 feet as long as we're further forward. Now that the davit is installed, the next piece we have to tackle is the harness work. The harness work is the only piece that is not included with the purchase of an ST-275. We can't presuppose all the links necessary to do it. What we do is we create temporary links from the lifting eyes in the end of the davit to the pick points in the tender. In this case, we have an inflatable floor tender. We added one in the bow and two on the transom so that we had suitable pick points. It seems like the most intimidating part. It really is not. What we do is we fabricate a temporary harness that we can then take the measurements from and make them ourselves at a marine chandlery that has the supplies. First thing we want to do is determine what we want the attachment point to be at the end of the davit. My preference would be the quick connect carabiner. We have to disconnect the tender from the davit at some point. This is the easiest point that we can see to make that connection and visually inspect that they're closed. On the lifting eye point, I'd prefer to use a D-shackle. It's more of a permanent link, it doesn't come on and come off, and we can ensure that it's nice and tight one time and we don't have to double check that anymore. So if we get that put together, we have the davit arm end, we have the lifting point end, and then we have just a fixed link that we can go recreate someplace else. On the bow side, most often on an ST-275, a single lifting point in the bow is more than enough. On the transom, however, we need to have two. That helps stabilize the outboard motor. This apparatus is great for the bow. Our preference is that when we have 2 points, we put a union or a ring. The carabiner goes on to that point and we split. That way we have a fixed length, we have a union so as not to cause any binding, and then we have 2 points, 2 measured lengths we need to accomplish. Our first attempt is pretty good. My concern is that we're not putting any downward pressure on those hinges, which means the tender is fully hanging on the tips of the davit arms. We'd like to be able to split that load. So what I'll do is lengthen the inside straps to see if we can get a better cradle. That's better. You can see the tender snugs up in the arms. Now let's check the lift. That's a little more pressure on the tubes than I want. The tender won't stow itself completely. So we're going to try to find a balance between those two. It may not be perfect, but it will always work. We found a spot that works pretty well. As you can see, the tubes have nice pressure on both sides, and it deploys and retrieves nicely. we can now take the orange straps and know that finite length and have them made off-site. One of the things that's nice about the adjustable straps and not links to chain is you can make smaller incremental changes to get an exact fit. As you can see, this is the final stowed position for the tender. Outboard motor on and ready to go. There's one more thing I'd like to talk about. This will ride all day long in medium water, just like this, no problem. One more thing we can do for added stability is take a painter line back to a stern quarter cleat, tie that off with just moderate tension. That keeps the bow from swinging out. Now it's rock solid in there and not going to go anywhere. So, block and tackle supports the outboard motor on the transom. The bow is the light end. We don't need that block and tackle, but when we're running at high speed or in rough water, we like to have that line on there. Okay, here we are at West Marine, my local West Marine that has the parts and the tools to make that harness work. I guarantee you there's 2 or 3 places in your neighborhood that'll do that, at least a greater boating area there is. So here we go. What we do is we have our measurements that we took from those things. We're going to make our marks, 15 inches. Then we're going to grab those pieces and we're just going to line them up on our marks. Right? So now we cut the length, we cut the piece, wind it over, and crimp it. The people at West Marine are more than happy to help.